Okie doke. Whoa, hey, hi, hello, good morning. Let's hang out. It's my winters. I'm so glad it's a rainy map for the first one. So, so satisfying. How are things? Personally, things feel like I'm just slowly circling the drain. I say slowly, really in a timeline of months is what I'm looking at right now. By the end of December, I'm going to be broke. And, hardly a day goes by that isn't constantly eating at me. Now, I've set up a timeline of what kind of actions I need to take. No, naturally, I've been applying to jobs. I've been applying to jobs all summer since I left my prior employer. Granted, most of it's been virtual commute or remote work. And I know that those positions are, as always, in high demand. Frankly, positions in Seattle feel like they're always in high demand if they're worth your time. My last few jobs here have been agony to secure. I'm talking about applying to hundreds of openings before even hearing back. And it's something like 3% of job listings that I even get a no from. It's only about maybe a quarter to a half that send a recognition that they even received the application. And this isn't an uncommon experience. Getting a job is a thoroughly frustrating, uncomfortable, and dissatisfying experience. For me and for so many other people, especially young people. So yeah, that's been occupying a lot of my mind, a lot of my energy, a lot of my emotional capacity, anyway. It's been a struggle, dude. If I'm being honest, I'm having a lot of bad days. Having a lot of bad days where, I'm looking down the barrel of a gun, right? And I start thinking about, well, what if I can't get anything? What if, the bank runs dry and I can't pay rent and I can't get food and I can't pay utilities. Now, thankfully, in Seattle, we have a utility program based upon your income. And if you make under a certain amount, you can apply for aid. And I've been participating in that program, which has been amazing, absolutely amazing. But the funniest thing has kept me from reapplying. You have to re-up every so often just to make sure that your financial credentials have been slipped and that you're not just taking advantage of the system. It's, fairly intelligent and reasonable stuff. But I have not been able to submit the paperwork as my printer's out of ink, which is just, it's never cheap to replace printer ink, but it's really just adding insult to injury when applying for paperwork for discounted. And really, it's more like with the kind of power consumption and gas consumption that I have, it's more like negated cost. I have to buy something that's more expensive by weight and by mass than like damn near any other substance on Earth. It's insidious and ubiquitous. The many ways that we are just held captive victims by capitalism. And it's so ubiquitous and breathless and present everywhere in every facet of our lives that it's so easy to take for granted, or so easy to forget that it's even there sometimes. Just little fees and things being rounded up, and the prerequisites to getting any kind of aid or support coming in the form of, well, you must already own these commodities, or have this paperwork, or participate within this bureaucracy or this framework, and if you don't, then etc., etc., etc. I've said it time and time again, and it bears repeating. I'm incredibly privileged. Incredibly privileged. I have at my disposal a lot of resources, a lot of knowledge, a lot of expertise and skills that help me navigate these systems with a decent degree of deftness, with a fair degree of confidence. But my loathing of them, hatred towards so much of our material and financial society, really continues quite unabated despite that. I get frustrated and feel not... I was gonna say victimized, and I suppose that is correct, but a victim is often portrayed as an individual without power, someone who's used and has no recompense or recourse. And I feel like that a lot. But the truth is that we do have recompense. We do have recourse individually to small extents, but communally to inspiring heights. In social theory, there is an idea called social reproduction. Now, social reproduction isn't when you have sex in clubs or get freaky outside. No, social reproduction is a process that you and I and everyone else living today, or who has ever lived, participates daily in reconstructing and reproducing society. You know, the power stations keep running. Our water keeps getting filtered, purified. Ads keep running on TV. More products hit the shelves. People transport goods thousands or tens of thousands of miles to your doorstep. People make food that they can't even afford to eat themselves, etc., etc., etc. We keep all of these little moving pieces going, and that creates our material society. That reproduces our material society. And if you can reproduce it, there's this idea that then you can innovate on it, you can build on it, and you can, and we have. But I want to offer the consideration that in not more deeply analyzing and interpreting the ways in which we reproduce this society, day after day after day, have their foundations in very old, dark, and malicious places. That so much of what we do foundationally, structurally, institutionally, they're based in imperialism, they're based in racism, they're based in extremisms that have slowly and slowly just become normalized and taken for granted. And how do you change that, right? How do you change that? That's a big ask. It's an exhaustingly big ask. Because individually, I know you can't do much about it. I know, I hear you. It's not like you can go out one day and fundamentally change the world through sheer willpower alone. We're told that we can. Right? The American dream, this idea of individual exceptionalism, is that bullshit lie. Right? That individually we can go out and change the world. That one person with a good idea or a dream can make it happen. No, that's not true. It's a lie. It can't make it happen. Not individually. The way that things are done and accomplished meaningfully is communally. If we are to change the world, if we are to make a better society, a greater society, a kinder, more humane, more enlightened society, a better world for everyone, well, we have to do that through organizing. Now, organizing is this very loose, nebulous word, right? Oh, I'm an organizer. What does that mean to you? Right? You just move things around, or you talk a lot, or you talk to people a lot. And organizing is social logistics, right? It's the management and ordering of people. It's connecting people with different skills, different knowledge sets, different expertise, different passions, different fields to one another. It's finding people who share common goals, common desires, common needs and wants and dreams with one another. So like the idea of a a dating website like OkCupid or Tinder and 1.5 million other ones out there. Right? The idea is that this framework, this structure will help you get together with someone else or multiple other people and do something that you want to do. Now, in the case of dating sites or hookup apps or whatever, Grindr, Tinder, OkCupid, etc., etc. OkComrade was a thing for a while. I don't remember if it still is. Social organizing is the same thing, but with getting folks together to not just have fun, though, you know, it can be fun, but organizing is about fundamentally changing the structure of our society and our communities. A beautiful example of this is something called mutual aid. Mutual aid is a tenet most often brought up when referring to anarchism, more so than anything else, especially in recent memory. Mutual aid is our ability or capacity to materially, directly support one another without engaging in the apparatus of capitalism to whatever extent that we can manage, right? Say that you are a plumber and that your parents, their drain's clogged and backed up. Do you charge them for it? Probably not, right? Or do you just go over there and help the people who you know and love? You know, mutual aid and direct non-profit-based aid is ubiquitous in our lives if we really look for it. Your parents, if you were fortunate enough to have them, or unfortunate enough, depending on your circumstances, They probably didn't raise you with the expressed intent for return on that investment. Now, I say probably because there certainly are individuals out there who do. But they probably didn't raise you with the expectation that you would pay them back. Mutual aid has been just beautiful to see in practice in recent months in the protests going on around the United States. Yeah, in terms of material support, sure. But in terms of... And I really feel like we're sleeping on this. And so many people are feeling disaffected and powerless. But these are the largest protests and some of the most sustained protests in American history, using a number of different systems to, using a number of different definitions of size and scale. This is truly an overwhelmingly important historic moment. And speaking to so many friends back in states like Indiana, states that are overwhelmingly conservative or liberal. And I don't mean liberal as in progressive, I mean capital L liberal as in the belief that a society and its rules are created by a social contract and maintained through that social contract. Which is not an innovative or inspiring idea anymore, because it's bullshit. The social contract is bullshit. You never signed it. I never signed it. We were prescribed it. And liberalism holds this sentiment that if the populace of a society grow dissatisfied with their social contract, that they should have the means and are in fact obligated to use whatever means necessary to change it. Well, if you're a liberal, you should be a revolutionary. You should love revolutions. You should love breaking up the status quo. You should love protests. Because that's direct participation in revising, in reviewing the social contract. But let's be honest, there aren't a lot of liberals out there. Even people who are Democrats are, by and large, not liberals. Not anymore. They're what are called neoliberals. Neoliberals prioritize the welfare of the economy and the profitability of the economy over the health of individuals or the welfare of individuals. It's primarily the job of the state to improve the capacity of certain individuals to pursue wealth and success than it is to guarantee those benefits to all. That is what you will more predominantly see. How do you change that? Well, you change that by having conversations. Starts that small, it really does. You talk to your friends and family about what's going on. About rampant police brutality, about the myriad of abuses of capitalism and our imperialist state. It is imperialist. Yeah, we're not called an empire, not de facto, but we are de jure one. We have client states who are dependent on our financial and military aid to maintain themselves, and have had for quite some time. We use our military forces to extend our will, political influence, and economic apparatus to other nations across continents, across oceans. We extract material, financial wealth from other nations, from other places, often through the use of military force, and bring that wealth back to our country in order for our direct benefit. The United States is an empire. I remember in elementary school, middle school, I so often hear other people repeating this sentiment when talking about the Third Reich, and talking about the rise of fascism in Europe and Italy, Germany. This sentiment that it couldn't happen here. It's so ignorant. It's so ignorant and blissfully so. Not only can it happen here, and is happening here right now, it has been happening here for quite some time. In 1933, I believe, 33? There was something called the Business Plot. The Business Plot was a plot exposed by General Smedley Butler of the, is he a Marine? I believe he was a Marine. Can't remember. Very well respected figure in United States history, of a coup plotted by major business leaders and finance leaders of the United States, individuals who would either directly or indirectly be found to have familiarity with, at the very least, the Silver Shirts, or the Silver Legion of America, a fascist party founded in the image of the Nazi Party in that same year, in 1933. This business plot aimed to remove the then president and replace him with a more malleable individual who would favor their business interests over what they saw as the hawkish attitudes of the sitting president at that time. They didn't like that in 1933 the president was already saying disparaging things about Germany, already talking about ending our splendid isolationism. It's very easy to feel small. Alright, it's very easy to feel like you don't have power, and I feel that way sometimes. I absolutely do. But if you're feeling that way, I promise you, the best thing you can do to feel empowered, to get a reminder of the kind of influence you do have, is to talk to the people you love. Not just in a, hey, I need affirmation kind of way. Nothing wrong with that. I have to do that from time to time. But I mean more so in the capacity of what's the expression? I think there's an expression from the 50s or 60s, giving someone some solid dick was an expression from the mid-20th century of talking to somebody about something difficult and uncomfortable. What we would call today real talk. Yeah, that stuff. That stuff is what you have to do. And not get caught up in rhetoric. Not get caught up in all of this stuff that is so easy to get caught up in. Like, fundamentally, people care about people. If they don't, they have a condition. And that condition means that they need help. Right? Not just that they're bad, but that they're sick and need help. Fundamentally, unfortunately, we are all of us selfish. To an extent. To varying extents, right? But we are all of us self-interested individuals and beings. We're wildly, beautifully collaborative, but fundamentally, chemically, we operate as a series of feedback loops. I do X, I get Y. And it's often not intentional. More often than not, it's not intentional at all. It's just, I do this, I get serotonin or dopamine or whatever. I get chemical. And chemical makes me feel good, so I'll keep doing thing. Thing can be holding space with people who share the same ideas and values that I do. Thing could be being violent, being selfish, or helping someone out because it's a reminder that you are a good person. Or at least quiets the doubt in your mind that maybe I'm not a good person. Right? I don't believe that we can talk our way out of this. I don't. I don't think there's some magical way that we can use logic and reasoning to disarm hate. To diffuse centuries of white supremacy. To root out and gut out and destroy the remnants of generational racism, institutional racism that has wormed and wired and wound its way into nearly every facet of our lives and our society. You can't talk through that. But hopefully, you can reach someone. Just start with one other person. Start with one other person and try to connect with them. Try to convince them. Not debate with them. Though sometimes that's effective for individuals. Debate is only an effective means of discussing ideas if you both enter with the expressed willingness to change your ideas. We can't have debates about issues when these issues fundamentally impact the lives of human beings. At that point, a debate isn't taking the issue seriously enough. A debate is not giving it the weight and the gravity that these things deserve. Organizing is about consolidating power. More than anything else, it's about consolidating power. Because individually, you do have power. You have the power to emotionally affect the people who care about you, to materially affect the world to a small degree in what you consume and produce. Now, so often in our liberal capitalist society, in neoliberal capitalist society, but really liberal capitalist society, or even a conservative one, even a fascist one, a means by which you are encouraged to participate in expressing that power is in consumption. Oh, well, you know, we're gonna just not go to Starbucks anymore. That'll show them. Or we're not gonna go to Chick-fil-A. No, that's kind of what I'm talking about. But that's not the end, right? You don't just boycott something and then trust that the weight of your tiny contribution to their bottom line will meaningfully impact things in any regard. That is step one. Step one is exercising individual power. What do I produce? What do I consume? How do I control or change what I produce and consume? A big part of that, a big part in making that magnified, in making that more noticeable, more impactful, is then organizing with people who share similar skills, labor, value, etc., etc., etc. It's called joining a union or forming a political party. We unionize because we can see individually the small ways, and we can understand academically or theoretically the small ways in which our power to consume, to produce, changes the world. You know, you vote with your dollar, but you also vote with your production, not just your consumption. You are not just a consumer, you are a producer. Whether you produce and provide services, skills, expertise, knowledge, emotion, satisfaction, pleasure, you're producing something. Otherwise, what the fuck are you being paid for, right? And truth be told, you're probably not being paid enough for it, whatever it is. We unionize to expand influence and expand our capacity. And then we act collectively. It's not just one person refusing to go to Whole Foods. It's 1,000, 10,000, 15,000. Now that has a slightly more noticeable impact, right? That's why I'm saying it starts with organizing. A change starts with organizing. It starts with organizing your friends and family. You know, start small. Just talk to one person. And then, you know, find an organization to key into. Now, personally, I'm a very big advocate of the Democratic Socialists of America. They're not as radical as I'd like them to be. They're a big tent organization, so they try to accommodate a lot of values and a lot of platforms and really serve as just a focal point for the left, the real left, progressives, socialists, anarchists, communists, democratic socialists, radical socialists, reformists, abolitionists, revolutionaries. And yeah, we all squabble and nip at each other and bark and bite over which specific direction or philosophy or path might be best or most prudent in whatever specific situation. But the trajectory, the direction, that's a shared value. You know, you don't have to 100% agree with someone to work with them. The Democrats and Republicans are a perfect example of this. They disagree superficially about social issues. Yet when it comes to issues that matter, like healthcare, social aid, they rhyme more often than not. Oh, they'll sell their constituents different rhetoric, but in the end, they're batting for the same team. And it's not your team, and it's not my team. They're batting for people making millions a year. If you look with any degree of sincerity at the policies that our elected officials so often push through or institute, if you look just in the small instance of this year, 2020, and the bailouts and stimulus packages provided, trillions of dollars of buyouts, buybacks to corporations who, in truth, didn't need it to survive, but needed it to profit. And mere thousands for individuals who do need direct aid to survive, who do need help. I know you've probably been sold this line that, well, it's just because the Democrats control this or the Republicans control that. No, they vote pretty aligned on these things by and large. Now there are exceptions. There are good people in Congress, but there aren't many of them. You know, you do have some democratic socialists in office right now by efforts of organizations like the DSA. And that's definitely something to be hopeful about and inspired about, and, you know, it's good. Is it good enough? Fuck no. A number of weeks ago, I was talking with someone who is adamant about this idea that, well, progressives are winning. We just have, you know, look at all these progressives we have in Congress now. We just got to keep voting them in. That's how we'll win. Oh, bless your heart. You clearly haven't been around for many election cycles. Yeah, right now things are looking surprisingly okay with the trajectory of year over year, election cycle over election cycle. The number of progressives in Congress is increasing, but if you look at the far end of that, the number of far-right candidates is increasing too, and the Overton window being the window of normalcy, what is okay, or the median of political society, if you will, has been shifting year after year, decade after decade, to the right. And not slowly, either. But sure, you know, if that's the direction you're pulled in, if that's the work that you feel you can contribute to, absolutely participate politically. But don't stop there. Don't stop at, well, I voted. Because, let's be honest with one another, your vote doesn't matter. Your vote is a percentile of something that can be easily ignored by people who have real power. Real power meaning organization, meaning institutional power, meaning influence over what's produced, what's consumed, what's moved and operated, who and where. The means of production. Yes, literally the means by which things are made and consumed, but so too the means by which things are reproduced socially. Day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. Social reproduction and its means are tightly, strictly controlled by media corporations, yeah, but, you know, political and social hegemons too. A hegemon, or hegemony, is a word with a Greek root, I believe, meaning it's an idea or sentiment or value that asserts its authority. It's like it's not direct control. A hegemon it isn't a king. It isn't a queen, it isn't an emperor, but emperors can be hegemons and kings can be hegemons. Hegemons are people who operate in soft power more so than hard power, but still quite strictly dictate the values and norms around them. A hegemony is a predominance of certain values, of certain norms. The ability to perpetuate this predominance and establish this predominance as not unusual, but normal, as usual, as typical, as good and right and necessary. Is it good that a third of Americans can't afford their homes? Are we gonna vote our way out of that? Donald Trump has made it clear, instrumentally clear, that he intends to do nothing. And Joe Biden has said time and time again that he intends to do nothing, or at least as little as possible. Because they both ultimately profit from the same scheme, right? They're both not of the working class. They're not our people. They don't care about us. Not really. Not substantially. We are a means to an end. For them, and frankly for ourselves. Yeah, it's so fucking frustrating talking to friends across the country who feel distant and disempowered. Because that's how a system based on inequity and inequality and abuse maintains itself. Stripping away your sense that you have influence, you have autonomy, you have power, you have the ability to influence the world around you. And if you don't feel that you do, well, then you won't try. If we look at modern history of the premature removal of heads of state in the United States, whether we're talking about Kennedy or others, That's what an individual can do if pushed to an absolute extreme. An absolute extreme. So, trying to remind people that we don't have power. Trying to remind people that our only power is in our participation in and obedience to the status quo, to electoral politics, etc., etc. It's in trying to protect those who currently have power, those who currently operate with some degree of control. Because human life is a fragile thing. And all of us, regardless of how much money, power, influence we have, we're never truly safe. And that fear, that recognition will push people to do terrible, terrible things in the pursuit of this feeling of safety. Now, personally, my desire is to see organizational boom, organizational growth. What I want from you, from my friends and family, I want you to join a union. I want you to join the Democratic Socialists of America. I want you to consider joining the Progressive Party or the People's Party. I want you to, when there's injustice, strike. I want you to protest. I want you to not just do so individually and performatively. I want you to do so structurally. I want you to look at the power and influence that unions that control logistics truly have. For one day this year, one day, the docks of the western United States stood still. Nothing came in, nothing came out. One day. If that lasted for a week, this country would be on its knees. Financially, economically, materially, there are so many. Most cities can last about 3 days on the stores of food and material that we have. About 3 days. And then we're out of food. Not like all the food's been eaten, but there's no more food on the shelves. There's no more readily publicly available resources. That's what that means. 3 days. If you want power, that's power. That's the power of a protest. That's the power of a strike. That's the power of organizing. That's the power of a union. If you don't feel powerful, it's because you're alone. If you don't feel powerful, it's because you're not standing by people who share the same values that you do. All you have to do is organize. All you have to do is find those people. And I'm telling you, for most of us, those people are in the Democratic Socialists of America. Yeah. We do have the potential to change things, to meaningfully counter capitalism, to call it and usurp it. Now, I want to be clear. We're already doing that. These protests have been ongoing. They've been trying to do that. And if you've been seeing the landmark cases of police brutality That's the response. That's not accidental. That's not a few bad apples. That's the institutional and structural response to resistance. To people challenging the status quo. To people questioning the status quo and daring to assert their value in defiance of its dominance. The police are doing their jobs. They're not individuals who are operating outside the law. The law is something that does not equally apply in this country, or in any country, or in any period of history. The law is an abstract. The law is a means of relegating the use of force and permitting the state a monopoly on that use of force. And yeah, dude, it's scary. It's absolutely scary coming face to face with that sort of stuff. With looking at it head on and challenging it. And there's so many well-intentioned liberals out there who are shocked at the cooperation between white supremacists and alt-right or fascist organizations and police forces across the United States. You shouldn't be. They have the same bosses. They have the same values. They want the same things. Why wouldn't they work together? The law is not impartial. It has never been impartial. And the sentiment that it is impartial, or could ever be impartial, is a lie. It's a lie handed to you in order to manufacture consent. Manufacturing consent. Also the name of a good book. Manufacturing consent is the myriad of ways that a society keeps you docile, keeps you complacent, and keeps you an active, willing participant in social reproduction. We manufacture consent through media, we manufacture consent through faith, we manufacture consent through material benefits, we manufacture consent through lies and sentiments and myths and legends surrounding who we are as a people, what we are as a nation, what we do, how we exist. A lot of it is based on lies perpetuated to make us feel okay about our participation within this status quo, within the superstructure. Santa isn't real. Right? And for most people, learning that Santa or the Easter Bunny or Jesus isn't real. And some people haven't quite learned that last part yet. It's very painful, and they tend to react quite badly, and feel betrayed that they were ever told those lies or fed into that framework in the first place. No, why do we believe in Santa Claus? Why do we perpetuate that? Is it for the mystery and the magic of some old white dude who has an enslaved workforce in the Great White North breaking into your house once a year and arbitrarily, well, giving presents based on individual merit? Partially, right? Santa Claus and other similar myths reinforce this idea that the world is a just place, that good people get their just desserts. Good things happen to good people. If you're a good little girl or boy, you're gonna get a present. If you're bad, you're gonna get coal. Right? It's a lie to reinforce us that there's some justice, some true light of morality in the world that holds people accountable in the exact same way that religious faith does. And if you're religious, I don't want to take your religion from you. And if you believe in Santa Claus, I do want to take that from you. But but it's important to look at what these entities do. On the other hand, institutions like churches have incredible, beautiful, inspiring potential to affect change. When I'm talking about organizing, when I'm talking about organizations like the Democratic States or Socialists of America, when I'm talking about unions, a church is a union. A pastor or a priest stands, or sits, or paces about a pulpit and dictates to an audience what to believe, or reinforces beliefs that they already have, encourages them to produce this or consume that. You know, we don't eat this meat during this week of the year. And those values, those aren't arbitrary. Lent, Fat Tuesday, these things, they were based on material realities at the time, based on the availability or scarcity of resources. And they massively impacted the economies of participating communities at that time. Churches in the United States have this current veneer of being apolitical institutions. They are by no means apolitical. They are actively political institutions, but they have been robbed and denied their revolutionary, reformist history by individuals and institutions who would not benefit from a change in the status quo. When Christianity made its way here from Europe in the founding days of this continent as a European institution, it's very important to look at which Christian organizations made their way here. They were ultra-fundamentalists. They were ultra-conservatives. They were people so conservative, so full of vitriol and hate, that they were pushed out of Europe. Now, Quakers are generally the exception to this. Quakers are quite fundamentalist, but have been an amazing force for good in American history. Look at the abolition of slavery and how churches were utilized then for good and ill. Churches in the North, now, we're so often shown time and time again how Scripture demanded the abolition of slavery, that Scripture clearly could have been interpreted no other way. Well, not true. If you look at the South at that time, if you look at what churches in the Confederacy were saying at that time, they were preaching quite the opposite. That it was natural, that it was a right, and that it was something that could not and should not be taken away or changed. Look at the civil rights movement and the massive capacity that Black churches took in helping to organize and sustain those movements. You can look today at Kentucky, the protests going on in Louisville. The protesters have night after night taken shelter in a church because the police won't storm it. The police won't arbitrarily beat, arrest, and harass these people participating in democratic society, in the legal proper way because they're hiding within a church. So if you have faith, use it. If you belong to a religious community, use it. If you're irreligious, like myself, if you're atheist, if you're agnostic, try to recognize the ways that our neighbors, our family, our brothers and sisters, mothers and fathers who still hold faith, that's not the fight we need to be having. We don't need to be arguing about if God exists or not. Either God does or doesn't. Ultimately, in the end, it doesn't matter. Because we're here, and we exist, and focusing on us, it's more important. That's a proven, shared value. True Christians, like true Sikhs, like true Muslims, know, like our Buddhist brothers and sisters, that our true calling, as any good member of faith, is to love one another, is to provide aid and succor and shelter to one another, to protect our mutual humanity and dignity, to protect the weak from the strong, the meek from the vicious. That is the calling of faith. Not in convincing people that they're going to hell. Not in shaming people for the people that they love or the way that they practice their faith. Not for wearing certain religious garments or not wearing certain sacred things or being able to recount texts in the correct way. These faiths are in some way about control, and about controlling you, and about controlling the values you have, what you see as right, what you see as wrong. Yeah, they prescribe reality in a very troubling way. Because of the potency of that power. It's frightening. For those of us who don't share your faith, it is frightening to look at the potency and efficacy of that prescription. Just in the same way that you can look at other faiths and be frightened by the efficacy by which other people adhere to theirs. And you may find their beliefs and values alien, foreign, strange, different, wrong even, abhorrent even. People feel that way about your faith too. But fundamentally, you all have the same mission statement. You all have the same calling given to you by your gods and your prophets and your leaders and your brothers and your sisters. It's service to man. It's service to humanity. It's community. It's belonging. It's perpetuating and sustaining human existence. Not in controlling it, not in dashing it, not in subverting it. The most hateful book in the Bible is the book of Revelations. The only book in the New Testament that wasn't directly prescribed or related to Jesus. Right? It's about the furthest book from the word of their Messiah. It's full of sentiment that Christians are better than others. Christians are a new chosen people, that in the end of days, there will be two armies fighting for the fate of humanity. One, the army of God, and the other, the army of man. And it's prescripted and assumed that any true adherent to the faith would naturally of course, belong to the army of God. And it is at this point, after decades of being Christian, in reading and contemplating on this last great battle, that I lost my faith. That I decided resolutely, irrevocably, I knew what side I'd pick. When I picked the side of people claiming to act on behalf of a divine cause that called for the destruction, elimination, and of violence against their human siblings? Or would I side with the side resisting that? Now, and I'm sure I've talked about this before. I still fundamentally believe in the good of Christianity. In the good that it has the capacity to possess. In the good that it has the capacity to do. I feel ultimately it fails in that capacity, which is why I'm not an adherent. But I don't speak to my grandparents, my mother, my other family members, and try to dissuade them of their faith. That's an individual choice, right? And if something's true to you and beautiful to you, and it's not hurting anyone, why should I try to take that from you? My point, as winding as it is that we can collaborate and stand together with people who have different values than we do. We don't need to see the same Holy Land. We don't need to want for the same horizon, the same goal, the same promised land. So long as you and I don't want to be here, so long you and I don't want this, so long you and I are trying to affect the possibility that this might not be all that there is, we can stand together. So long as we're pulling in vaguely the same direction, we can work together. And that's the beauty of an organization like the Democratic Socialists of America. Are they perfect? No. Are there ideological differences between individual members, individual chapters? Absolutely. Is there politicking and discussion and yada yada yada? Of course, it's a human community. Just like any other. But it's one that I fundamentally believe is for our betterment. Any true Christian, any true adherent to a loving faith, I'm positive, would find the same to be true. It's really easy to discount our neighbors and family members who are in rural conservative communities as being unreachable, and the cause for reform, for progressivism, for socialism, for the abolition of all of these systems that we choke and suffer under. Because we've been told that they're hicks, they're ignorants, they're rednecks. Some are. Sure. Yeah, just like so many city folk and progressives are like Nancy Pelosi. They're absolute ignorance on the far side of the spectrum. They're self-interested, selfish, bitterly dug in to values that ultimately are self-serving, selfish, and don't benefit their communities. In the 20th century, some of the most active participants of socialist activity were rednecks, were country folk, were from West Virginia, Kentucky, Midwest, from these coal states, from the Rust Belt, from the Bible Belt even. And it's truly a loss if we cut from ourselves the potential of standing with these people who, in the end, want the same things that we do. Yeah, a lot of them want small government. You know why they want small government? It's because the large government that we have right now doesn't work for them. It doesn't work for me, it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for the vast majority of people. Who it works for are the elite. So when you have libertarians, who are your friends, who are talking about, the problem's government, keep in mind that libertarian socialism is a thing. Keep in mind that you can have shared values. And you can work together, and you can stand together. You don't have to absolutely 100% agree with the person next to you, so long as you share a framework of where you stand. All of us know at least one person who isn't gonna vote. Statistically, all of us know many people who aren't going to vote. We just might not be too aware of that. If you know someone who isn't gonna vote, if you know someone who hasn't protested, if you know someone who hasn't joined the DSA, if you know someone who hasn't done any sort of participatory action at all, talk to them. And I've been trying to repeatedly, gently broach these topics with friends and family, with decreasing subtlety. I've been repeatedly and increasingly offering what's tantamount to a call to arms for my friends who don't believe that they have power, don't believe that they have any capacity in their community to change anything because it's so conservative, because it's the Midwest, it's Indiana. And part of that feeling, part of that thing that they've persuaded themselves about is this feeling and a removal of individual responsibility. This removal of this responsibility that you do have power, even if it's not much power, even if it's only a little bit. You are ethically and morally contingent on the utilization of that power. You only have a small audience? That's fine, use it. You only have a little bit of power? That's fine, use it. Oh, but I live in a small town. That's okay. Oh, but people are conservative. That's okay. Oh, but, we can't vote our way into office. That's okay. Oh, but, you know, these protests, we can only go out once a week, or once a month. It's better than not at all, right? Oh, but, well, to go to a protest, I'd have to drive an hour. And? Drive the hour. Only do it once a month, if that's all your organization can really accomplish safely. If you absolutely can't go to one at all, buy supplies for people who can. Give the bailout funds to help the people, frankly, who are braver than you. It's not a dig. It's really not a dig. If someone else is willing to stand and you're hiding in their shadow and hoping that they're successful, but not doing anything to contribute to their success, they're braver than you are. I'm not trying to shame you. I want you to be as brave as they are. I know that you can be. I know that you have the capacity to be beautifully passionate, fantastically angry, vibrantly insistent upon what you see as true, beautiful, and necessary in this world. I know that inside of you burns for a more just, more kind world. I know you could do it. And I think you know that too. I think you know that you should be doing something. And I think that there's so many would-be progressives, would-be socialists, would-be revolutionaries, would-be participants who are waiting for permission to participate, who are waiting for a sign that now's the time, that this is the moment, this is the calling. You're never going to get that. You're never going to get that permission. You're never going to get that sign. You're never going to get that single beautiful moment. You're never going to get what Constantine got, allegedly, when leading his army into battle and he saw the sign of the cross in the heavens and knew that if he took upon the faith of this Jewish heresy, that he would have victory, right? There are no signs from God. You won't get one. You're getting signs every day. From your neighbors, though, from your community. If you pay any sort of attention, if you get news out of anything besides just mainstream media, you'll know that these protests have been going on for hundreds of days. Sustained day after day after day. Not just week after week, not just weekend after weekend, not just month after month, day after day. You know that people like me have been tear gassed, beaten, pushed around, bloodied, blinded, killed for their bravery, for their participation, for their audacity to stand up and just say that Black Lives Matter, that police brutality is unacceptable, that the carte blanche we offer police in the execution of their duties is wholly unacceptable, that human life should have more value than it does here, that someone ending a life should be held accountable for that, regardless of their station, office, or profession. If you fantasize that you would have done a damn thing, a single goddamn thing, during the 1930s in Germany, 40s in Germany, if you fantasize that during the Civil War, you would have sided with the Union, if you think that during slavery you would have helped slaves escape lives of torment in the South, if you hold any such illusions, you will do something. Or you will dissuade yourself of any illusion that you are a compassionate human being. And frankly, that's the line, right? You either do something, or, not to me, to yourself, and years from now, you'll have to look back and admit that, no, you would stand by and do nothing. That you would prefer your individual comfort, your sense of normalcy, over the well-being of others. If you feel like my comparison to Nazi Germany is preemptive, well, it won't be preemptive for long. And we're seeing armed gangs, armed white supremacist gangs, working with police forces, deputized by police forces in the United States to combat, suppress, and harm protesters calling for the defunding or abolishing of our current police institutions for the dignity of human life. I don't think anyone can reasonably look at the world that we're in and the state that we're in and not see the similarities. Because if you talk to the few remaining individuals who survived those days 90 years ago, 80 years ago in Germany, they'll tell you what you're seeing here today with us is what they saw then. Now, this isn't some vapid comparison made by Godwin's Law for the sake of dramaticism, for the sake of vibrantly illustrating a point by drawing it to a logical extreme. No. This is a material reality. It's a comparison based upon shared values, shared tactics, shared heritage. So many of my friends are older than I am. I've always liked associating with older folks. There's a lot you can learn from people who've been around longer than you, even if it's a day more. I mean, they've seen a whole day more than you have. Like, I really enjoy listening to older people talk about their lives, talk about what they've seen, what they've experienced. It's a whole world that I'll never see. They have. It agonizes me to see so many of our elders abused and manipulated the way that they are right now by our media, being misled and led just senselessly to fear the young. So many of us are fighting for things for them. We want you to have health care. We want you to have a basic standard of living. We don't want our elders having to work into their 70s and 80s and 90s just to survive. We don't want someone whose bottom line is profit to be making a decision whether you should be getting care or not, or whether you should be on life support or be getting the life-saving medicine that you need. We don't want the arithmetic being done to be about dollars. We want to believe that human lives, and we want policies that reinforce that human lives have value superseding that of capital. That human life is sacred. But I mean, the truth is, we've lost the older generation. We've really lost them. We've lost them to CNN and Fox News. We've lost them to mega churches. We've lost them to a subtle decay of the media that they once knew and the news that they once believed in. We've lost them to the illusion that slowly settled in over the course of decades. And I don't know if we can get them back. I really don't. When I was young, I really looked up to my older friends. Now, they were only a couple years older than me, but they could drink or smoke, and I couldn't. They could go to bars, and I couldn't. They could vote, and I couldn't. And they always seemed to know so much more than me. You know, I'd argue with them and agitate them to no end because I wanted their approval. I wanted their respect. I wanted their, acceptance, recognition. I wanted the approval of these older people, older kids, etc., because it made me feel accepted. It made me feel validated. And it's deeply frustrating. Deeply frustrating now that I'm in my late 20s, many of them are in their 30s. I feel like I am screaming that the world is burning. That we have to do something, that people are dying. And that the bare minimum they can do is protest. The bare minimum they can do is donate. The bare minimum they can do is join the DSA. And they won't even do that. They'll talk about these disaffected things. Like, there's all these things I've talked about. These senses and illusions that they're powerless, that become so ingrained into their person. Millennials have been so stripped of power, so beaten down. It's deeply internalized now. It's deeply, deeply internalized. And it's absolutely aggravating. I'm a little brother. Now, I'm fortunate enough that my older sister is a very intelligent woman. She is very analytical, has a great mind for critique, analysis, understanding, and compassion in the same breath. It has meant the world to me. It has meant the world to me to see her say a goddamn thing about what's going on. Not just that we need to educate ourselves early on in these George Floyd protests, in these Black Lives Matter protests. She was toting that line that was going around that, oh, white people need to educate ourselves in this moment. What we gotta do are read these like 5 fucking books. And that's the kind of stuff she was sharing. And it broke my heart. It really broke my heart. Because I'm like, no, this doesn't do anything. Selective consumption in a capitalist system isn't going to do anything. Like, if you're really interested in the disestablishment of racism, if you're really interested in the uprooting of bigotry, you do that through labor, through organized labor, through unions, through organizations like the IWW. I'd say the AFL-CIO, but they let cops in their unions, so fuck the AFL. AFL-CIO are big yikes for me until they get those fucking police unions out. And then I started seeing a slow change. I started seeing a slow change from my sister as things dragged on. As day after day, week after week, I would post videos and statistics about X many people protesting in this city and that city, showing instances of police brutality over and over and over again every day. Some days God, it's surreal. It's genuinely surreal in a day where we don't get dozens of new reports of police brutality, where we don't have dozens of new documented cases of police brutalizing the people that, in theory, they're meant to serve. But it absolutely warmed my heart to see my older sister, we're only separated by a couple of years, starting to post things being not quite radical. I don't think she's there yet. But talking about the DSA, talking about unions and organizing and direct action and direct aid. Not just individual lib acts of reading books and performative justice and performative outrage, but real, meaningful, lasting, impactful community building, organization building, resistance building. You know, I talk to so many of my friends, I talk how fucking brave or inspiring I am, and that's such horseshit. I'm not brave. I'm not inspiring. I'm desperate. I'm desperate, and I'm tired, and I'm so fucking angry. I'm not inspiring. If you're inspired by me, fucking join me. Don't tell me I'm doing a good job or that I'm brave or you wish that X, Y, or Z. Step up or shut up. I'm not doing this for affirmation. I'm not doing this for clout. I'm not doing this, any of this, for approval. I've protested because I sat at home watching the protests being live streamed on Twitch, and Woke at the time was really the only one. Now the Seattle Protest Network, SPM, I think, is the name of another stream that's quite focused on local affairs. I sat at home watching the first night, and the police brutality astounded me. So I went out and protested the next day. Why the next day? Well, I thought to myself, can I live with myself if I don't do this? Like, I don't really know if I have any friends to go with, so I kind of frantically started reaching out for the distant friendships I do have here in Seattle to find people to connect with, to go with. Because going to a protest alone is a very dangerous thing. Because if the police or alt-right pick you up or disappear you and nobody knows you were there in the first place, people can't go looking for you. People can't help you. That's another important part about organizing, is just your individual safety. But I went to the first few days of protests. And really, I went to like a week of protests, and that's about it. That's about all I could do, because my support network of people who would go stopped going. And I stopped going to protests when Chop or Chad or whatever the fuck you want to call it was Chaz. Sorry, not Chad. Chad would have been a great name. Chaz was founded because I'm like, this isn't materially doing anything. This doesn't feel very impactful. This just creates... There were a lot of tactical and strategic reasons why I didn't like it, and I've spoken ad nauseum about them before. Essentially, that the worst thing that a decentralized movement can do is centralize. That you're taking your greatest weakness and utterly destroying it by participating in consolidating like that. Consolidation leads to a participation of two centralized authorities, two centralized entities, being at odds with one another, one centralized entity that is sustained through the status quo and apparatus of the state, and the other isn't. Asymmetric warfare, whether it be political, whether it be peaceful or not peaceful, and truly none of this is peaceful, because human lives are the reason anyone is protesting. Calling for a peaceful protest is calling for people to get on the trains to the concentration camp, but, you know, have a sign about it. Now, I protested, and I've been aiding and abetting these protests in so much as I'm materially, emotionally, physically capable. Because I cannot live with myself if I don't. I would be a fraud and a hypocrite if I pretend in any way that I'm a compassionate, decent human being and do nothing. I have not been so harsh as to levy these critiques, standards, and assertions onto the people around me, onto the people that I love, openly. But openly is the operative word there. A lot of you have lost a lot of my respect. Not because you wouldn't stand up by yourself. Not because you wouldn't stand up when no one was asking you directly, but because when I have been asking directly, I've been getting so many excuses and so much bullshit. That's deeply disappointing. So, when I have seen individuals, like my sister, speak up, act up, I might want for more, to be truthful. I might want for just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more radical, just a little bit more agitating. Come on, like, the world's ending. Let's fucking act like it, right? But when I get anything out of these people that I care about, it's deeply, deeply satisfying. Yeah, I haven't talked to some of my friends in weeks. Some in months, really, since I first started pushing more and more and more. Not because people don't want to talk to me. I mean, by and large, I'm getting more support, more affirmation, more affection, affiliation, recognition than ever before. But because I just don't have the stomach to listen to the bullshit excuses of people that I love. Like, I get that you're afraid. I get it. I do. I'm afraid. They're afraid. Everybody's fucking afraid. You need to step outside of that fear and live despite it. You cannot live paralyzed by fear. When Roosevelt spoke, saying we have nothing to fear but fear itself, he was not saying that we should not be afraid. He was not saying that we should just go on as normal. In a way, he was, because he benefited from social reproduction. But in a way, the spirit of the thing was that we cannot act, individually or collectively, if we are paralyzed by fear, if we are paralyzed by doubt. Fear is the mind killer. Inaction is action. If you're not doing anything, you're enabling what's happening. If you're not fighting to stop it, you are participating in it. No, the adage, no staying neutral on a moving train. And I need you motherfuckers to internalize this. I need you to recognize that when you're not making a choice, or when you're putting off making a choice, when you are waiting for a better time or waiting for the right moment, when you are indulging in any degree in your privilege to just be comfortable for one day more, 1 moment more, 1 hour more, to just stay at home and watch Netflix, to just turn off the news, to talk about The Boys or whatever fucking TV show is of the moment, rather than talking about police brutality in the ways that we can do something about it. Yes, everyone needs a break, but there's a very noticeable difference between taking a break and turning off. And so many of you fucking people never turned on in the first place. And the respect that I've lost for you cannot ever come back unless you rectify that. I'm not my brother's keeper, right? It's not my job to nanny you and babysit you and urge you into action and push you into action. Like, I'm fucking trying, but the fact that I have to try and you're not doing it of your own volition speaks volumes. If you are half the people that I want you to be so desperately, you'll do something. So yeah, I haven't been talking about this stuff as much as I had been because I feel like my point had been made. Right? I laid it out there pretty clearly, fairly early on. By that I mean like immediately early on. I reinforced it day after day after day. And it is very noticeable when you're silent. The repeated phrase, white silence is violence, is very true, my friends. It's very true. I see so many of you who aren't fucking saying anything because you're worried for your job, or fuck your job. Fuck you. This isn't about you. This isn't about me. This isn't about individuals. This is about a collective, institutional, societal wrong. An illness that permeates our society. This is about saving lives individually, stopping more Breonna Taylors from being swept away in the night and having no one held accountable for their death. But it's also about offering to future generations what this generation was never given. Safety from this. Protection from this. It does no one any good to recognize that things are bad and do nothing about it. It does no one any good to pretend that things aren't bad and just hope that this all goes away. I can't imagine being a parent right now and not being invested in this. I can't imagine being a decent human being and not being invested in this. I don't just mean like caring about it, I mean doing something about it. To my Indiana friends who are like, well, there was one protest here. You know why there wasn't a second? You weren't there. You're waiting on someone to save you, and no one is going to fucking save you. You need to take some goddamn control of your life, of your society, of your community. Take some fucking responsibility and do it yourself. There it is. And that's ultimately what so much of this boils down to, is that white people, overwhelmingly white people, have been okay with black people putting their lives on the line, but have been too afraid to do it themselves. That they're resigned to seeing images and hearing stories about police violence day in and day out for a summer and more, and are resigned to doing nothing because they fear for their own comfort, safety, and welfare. An injustice to one of us is an injustice to all of us. What you're not seeing and you're not feeling is that these sins and crimes being perpetrated against innocents, against people braver than you, against people who are fighting for you, are crimes and ills suffered against you. What do I want from you? I want you to protest. I want you to agitate. I want you to organize. I want you to minimally join an organization like the DSA. That's it. Step 1, join an organization like that. Step 2, start talking about this every fucking day. Step 3, find a protest and join it. If you can't do that, donate with every single paycheck or every single source of income that you get regularly to protesters, to demonstrators, to causes fighting for you. No one's gonna save you if you don't save yourself. If you don't participate in your own liberation, if you don't participate in your own salvation, then you don't deserve it. We don't deserve it. But I'm not kidding myself. I know these words aren't gonna persuade anyone. I'm fairly convinced that it's hopeless. I am. I'm doing it anyway. What's the saying that doing something the same way repeatedly despite knowing the results is insanity? Oh, maybe I'm crazy. But from what I've seen, sanity's a lot worse right now. Sanity is being contingent and co-signed and resigned to this inhumane, unsustainable, irresponsible, abhorrent status quo that we have, it's not for me. If I can't find a way to survive in this world, I think that's okay. If I can't change it, if we can't change it, and my options are to conform and survive, or pass into the annals of history unnoted, unrecorded, unnoteworthy, and sooner than a generation passes forgotten, then, you know, I'll take my place there. I think this is going to be it for today. It's not a terrible note to end on, and we're almost at about 2 hours. I'm okay. In so much that any of us are okay right now. Which is to say I'm not okay. I'm stressed the hell out because in a couple of months, I won't be able to pay rent or pay for anything. Really? Now, chances are I'll probably be employed by then, and even if not, I have so much privilege, social, structural, institutional privilege that I can utilize for my benefit. I'm so better off than so many people are today. So this isn't a call for helping me. What I am calling for on is specifically you listening. At least join the DSA. At least do that. Bare minimum, just do that. If you're not registered to vote, do it. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? We're gonna fucking lose because everybody running, for the most part, are against us. But do it anyway. Participate in some small way. Yeah. Now more of something will almost assuredly be up tomorrow, but this is gonna be it for today. Until then, I'm gonna say toodaloo. Take care. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.